thank you for the introduction. Thank you to GSMA for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm only going to take 10 to 12 minutes max. Don't want to go into too much depth because I know we have a panel to follow as well. So as Samantha said, I'm the CISO for EMEA and Latin America. As an external-facing CISO, it's my job in Palo Alto to really work very closely with our most strategic customers and really help them transform new security initiatives and security capabilities within their organization over the course of 2, 3, 5 years even. And the topic today is really around how does Palo Alto Networks use artificial intelligence to obviously protect our customers. Now, I do want to start by saying there's not a lot of detail I'm allowed to share for obvious reasons, right? So I know there's a few people going, oh, no. So I'll share a few things, but ideally what we won't be doing is talking about specific AI models that we use and the specific products that we're going to get into in terms of Palo Alto and what models which product uses, right? Because we don't want to enable attackers ultimately, but we do want to share how we're using AI at a high level, which is what I'll do. And then, of course, during the panel, I'll share some thoughts around other key areas as well. So what does the AI threat landscape look like? Generally, what we're seeing is AI is traditionally transforming the overall landscape across really 3 key areas. The first really is around speed. So we're starting to see use cases where AI is being leveraged in the form of generative AI, where you can use tools like WormGPT as an example to create malware. And we're starting to see this happen more and more, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, but really that's one of the key areas that's enabling attackers to become a lot faster in the ability to essentially create the type of malicious code that they then go out and generate against their victims. The second, of course, is the scale. So at Palo Alto, we've been testing this with ChatGPT and a few other tools around generative AI, and what we've done is, versus traditionally sending out what you would typically expect as a phishing email to our employees just to test our capabilities, we started using generative AI to craft the emails. Now, as you can imagine, those emails come out perfect because obviously, the generative AI tool looks at any grammar mistakes, looks at any spelling mistakes, and essentially is able to create that email for us. And so when we send out that almost perfectly crafted email to our employees, we're actually seeing a 25% success rate versus what we were seeing in those traditional phishing email activities. So that's something that is, even to the most trained eye, that is something that is a cause for concern. And then, of course, the third area is what I call scope or sophistication. And this is really where you start to look at new types of techniques that attackers could possibly use, such as deepfake. And what we've seen through studies and some surveys is that we're actually starting to see twice as many deepfake activities in the first quarter of 2023 than we did in the entire year of 2022. And that, of course, continues to increase. And I'll share some examples later on at the panel as well. So that's the landscape. Now, the question is around LLMs, right? So do large language models such as ChatGPT or Bard or Gemini or Cloud or whichever tool that you're thinking about, are they really good adversarial AI tools to be using? And frankly, for now, at least with what our researchers are seeing at Palo Alto, we're finding that the answer actually is no. We don't think those types of tools are really able to create the type of malicious malware that perhaps the press is talking about or warning us around, right? We're not seeing that activity yet. Right? Is it capable? Sure. But as of right now, we're not seeing that type of activity. What we are seeing is that malware creation engines can actually enable the attackers to become faster. So if you're a novice beginner, frankly, hacker that has a tendency to start to use these types of tools, like, again, WormGPT as being one example, it's not really going to help you a lot. However, if you're an advanced attacker and you need a part of your code just to be optimized a little bit, you can actually use ChatGPT, or in this case, WormGPT, to get a lot faster at what you're doing. So that is what we're seeing. Now, we have a team at Palo Alto called Unit 42. It's a highly skilled, well-trained organization within our company. And their focus is to help really research new adversary groups and new tactics. And ultimately, when we speak to that team, what they're telling us is that WormGPT, which is probably the most common type of tool that the attackers are using right now, it's a subscription-based service, or $60 on a yearly basis is what you can pay. But it's really built off of something called GPT-J, which is something that's 3 years old at this point. Right, so it's not really up to date. It's not. It uses code and techniques from at least 3 to 4 years ago. And what we're finding is that's really easy for us and our tools. And by us, I mean that probably the wider peers that we have in the industry, but specifically for Palo Alto, to catch and to actually block very easily. Here's a quick example of how we run this type of analysis internally at Palo Alto, right? So again, I can't share the types of models we're using. What I can tell you is if we have an agent, we would actually use WormGPT-type tools from the dark web to generate malware. And using that generated malware, we would then inject it inside of our anti-malware engines that are essentially scanning and looking for that type of malware activity. And then we would obviously see some sort of a state or a reward from that particular activity. So it would tell us what it's seeing. Now, as I said earlier, it's easy for us to catch. And sure, we would catch it pretty much every single time. But in that off chance that we've gone in and we've adjusted the code, or that the code actually is something that's new or something that we're not able to catch, we then take that novel malicious code and we inject it as part of a wider training set with, of course, benign code, and inject that into our machine learning classifier and retrain our algorithm, which essentially makes it a lot faster, and inject that back into the malware sample and repeat. So as you can see, these are two loops that we're constantly working on. One that trains against the existing malware, and then one where we actually perfect the malware ourselves, or the tool finds out in certain ways to give us the ability to use that malware, then to run it through our classifier. So this is how our classifier essentially continues to enable itself. Now, the other question you're probably wondering is, well, you guys are a security company. Why are you using tools like WormGPT to get better at your capabilities? And the answer is very simple. We want to harden our systems as much as possible. We want to make sure that we use that hardening to get better with the models that we are using internally across our product line. And we want to ensure that, obviously, there's no surprises, right? That's ultimately the main reasoning for it. Here's some examples of some certain detections that we've seen by attacker groups. This is an example against, obviously, McDonald's and their ordering website. Here's another one with JCPenney. Another one which is slightly more closer to home in Turkey, where a bank phishing activity was created using WormGPT-type tools, where attackers actually leveraged that and ran it through. And so our tools, of course, caught it, we blocked it, but then we used that as an analysis to understand what's happening to perfect our engines even further. So what's concerning us? Right? Because as I said earlier, this AI versus AI piece, frankly, isn't really as concerning. It's not really happening, in our opinion, at this stage, right? At least not yet. What concerns us more, frankly, is the AI versus human capability, right? And this is really where you start to leverage the example I gave earlier around spear phishing. So take, for example, an attack group that is a persistent group that is specifically targeting your organization, that knows everything about your CEO, as an example. And at this point, now starts to create and use tools like WormGPT, as well as ChatGPT, to perfect phishing emails. And now, versus targeting just your CEO, starts targeting perhaps hundreds or almost everyone in your organization, and starts sending out that code. That's the level of depth that AI can enable those attackers, and that is obviously what's more concerning. On the flip side of this, it's the human versus AI component also. So on the human versus AI side, what's also concerning is when the attackers start injecting data poisoning into the wider model training set that we've essentially created for ourselves. Right? So both of those, AI versus human and human versus AI, are the types of things that are concerning. Now, at Palo Alto, as I mentioned, we've been using AI in different flavors. We looked at reimagining the way our products are built actually 10 years ago, using machine learning in our sandboxing capability and a whole host of different tools. Today, we have more than 35 out of pretty much all of the majority of our products, in fact, using some form of machine learning or artificial intelligence to essentially get better. We run that analysis and third-party analysis against, third parties, frankly, run that analysis as well, and we come out on top based on just basic out-of-the-box configurations. Because of the models we use, we're able to come out better than most of our peers in the market. But with generative AI, what we're starting to see is greater efficiency within our security teams. So within our SOC teams, as an example, or your SOC teams, as an example, with the use of security co-pilots, we feel this is going to change the game in terms of how quickly you can respond and you can scan and you can get better at your jobs on a day-to-day basis. So just to close out, here's some of the numbers that I wanted to share with you as I hand over to the next speaker. In terms of the products, these are some of the areas that we're seeing. On a daily basis, we're essentially detecting about 750 million new and unique events. We block about 1.5 million zero-day attacks that never existed the day earlier. And we're blocking about 8.6 billion attacks on a daily basis. But when we look at our own efficiency as an organization, we started deploying AI and machine learning very early on, as I mentioned earlier. And we're able to see a mean time to detect of 10 seconds in our security operations center and a mean time to respond of 60 seconds as well. So again, very heavy usage of the co-pilots along with our own machine learning capability and tools that we've created. Some that are created with AI from the ground up, some that we've ingested over the course of the last decade or so. Hopefully that was helpful, and look forward to the panel. Thank you.